Hi there folks and welcome to yet another movie review vlog. Netflix has, fittingly enough, seemingly gone crazy with the macabre uploads here in October. We're all waiting for Stranger Things Season 2, but they've already put out things like Gerald's Game, the horror comedy Little Evil, and now the more recent horror comedy, The Babysitter. The story is about a 12-year-old boy named Cole who has a pretty decent reason to be embarrassed because on top of constantly being bullied for being a bit of a nerd, he's also the only kid his age in town to still have a babysitter thanks to his slightly overprotective parents. Or, well, he would be embarrassed if not for the fact that his babysitter B is actually a really cool girl that protects him from bullies, listens to his interests, plays around with him, treats him like an adult, and, well, her being ridiculously hot doesn't exactly hurt either. One night, however, Cole decides to stay up late and see what exactly B gets up to after she puts him to sleep every time she visits. Unfortunately for him, it's nothing as simple as inviting friends over for a party or inviting a boyfriend over for sex. Instead, she turns out to be the leader of a satanic cult of teenagers who need his blood for a particular ritual. Now Cole has to try and defend himself from a whole group of killers and survive the night. There's a lot to talk about with The Babysitter and it's a bit of a strange movie, but let's start talking about Cole and B a little. Cole is very much a stereotypical preteen nerd who gets picked on by his schoolmates because he's not like everyone else. He even has a very cartoonish bully of a kid that has no character beyond being a bully because he thinks it's fun, and on occasion that does actually get a little bit grating. But his interactions with B make it all worthwhile. Once you've seen these two together on screen for a couple minutes, you can easily see how any 12-year-old boy would fall very hard for this girl. I mean, really, just spending a couple minutes with her in the first third of the movie makes her come across as a very fun person to be around. She treats Cole much more like an adult than his parents, who very much treat him like a 5-year-old at this point. That's basically the nicest way I can put it. And she listens to all his strange interests. She's willing to talk about any subject he has. She encourages all aspects of his personality. She protects him from bullies. It really is no wonder that he falls so hard for her, because she is literally everything he currently needs in his life that everyone around him is failing to be. It's really no wonder. And watching these two interact for the first 20 minutes, I actually wouldn't have minded seeing a movie that was entirely about this boy being in love with his ridiculously cool babysitter and whatever drama could come from that, like the obvious age difference getting in the way, having to put him down gently. I think there could actually be a really interesting movie in that alone. And then there's Cole himself. He's not a bad character at all. He's a very typical kid hero who's a little bit smarter, a little bit more mature than most his age probably would be, and that's what helps him through the night. But there's something about their nerdy interactions that some people might have a bit of a problem with, and that is that, yet again, we're very much dealing with 80s nostalgia. Even the poster, which is gorgeous by the way, I absolutely love it, very much calls attention to a sort of 80s neon art style. But when they're just hanging out and being dorky together, it's about stuff like Predator, it's about stuff like Star Trek, it's just a bunch of older franchises, and I get that that's on purpose because this movie is going for an 80s slasher movie feel, but it doesn't always feel entirely genuine. It doesn't like super rub the references in your face and like, remember this, remember this, remember this. It's just sort of brought up in casual conversation, which does somewhat work, and I guess you could make the argument that Brie has influenced him and shown him all sorts of cool things, but it still feels unnecessary here. I'm not an opponent of the 80s nostalgia that's going on recently, mostly because I've realized by now that referencing 30-year-old things is not anything unusual in movies. It's happened in every decade, let's not deny that. But it just feels a little bit out of place here. In my mind, it actually would have been a little cooler if Brie was receptive to the stuff he liked now from contemporary times, but hey, that's just a minor nitpick, really. Once we get to the horror slasher part of the story, the movie doesn't become different exactly, but it definitely switches gears and becomes a actually pretty exciting and occasionally very funny fight for survival. And while it's not exactly the most unique movie around, I actually do think it's a pretty fun spin on the classic slasher formula to have the numerous teenagers be the killers while there's only one victim. Something I remember as being decently similar to this was You're Next, wherein the final girl is facing several killers and is much more badass than said killers would ever be. But here we're dealing more with like a really hardcore version of Home Alone, it feels like at times. It's not quite as cartoony with the various traps, but it definitely has its moments of holy shit, this is just done for the sake of being crazy. And it's quite fun. Actually, unusually for a slasher movie, the most fun part for me of the horror story was the personalities of the various characters. They very much fit classic horror archetypes. We have the smart-ass black guy, we have the dumb blonde who only cares about her appearance, we have the jock, we have the weird girl who has to be a contrarian. She actually kind of comes across as a modern hipster. And these personalities would normally be very, very stock victims in any other slasher movie. But it's kind of fun to see how those personality traits translate into the role of the psychopath, because they have very different approaches to what they're doing, even if a couple of them may get bumped a bit too early to show that much of it. And no, they won't surprise you exactly, they're still very much acting their archetype. I just thought it was very, very fun to watch, and one of them in particular gets a very, very entertaining chase scene. I won't tell you who for the sake of spoilers, but I really think that was a fun idea. In fact, while the movie is generally very well shot and has some really fun action scenes and the occasional burst of awesome gore for the gore hounds, it's really some of the visuals that bother me a bit about this movie. Mostly in how it tries to present itself stylishly. We're already doing this 1980s slasher feel, which works fine. I kind of wish it wasn't there necessarily, but it works. It's still very fun to watch. But it will occasionally throw in graphics or pieces of text that exist only to remind you how awesome everything is like. There's a game that Cole and Bree play in the beginning where they make up their favorite Starfleet team, and you actually see little graphics and almost like trading cards of the characters they pick. And sometimes when somebody picks up a weapon, a piece of text will fly in and be like, oh hell yeah, he just picked this up. And, you know, it doesn't work. It comes across as the movie pretending to be an old classic that you've seen 5 times. It pretends to be a movie that you and your friends have seen a million times before, that you pop in with a beer and you're all ready to psych each other up over your favorite scenes. And that's a very, very hard thing to do right, and here it just comes across as obnoxious and as trying to force a reaction out of you, at least to me. I can see where they got this from. A lot of modern movies have tried to be self-aware this way. I just think it works better when it's related to genre rather than to audience reaction. It literally writes like hell yeah after somebody picks up a weapon. Come on, man. Let me decide if I think that's a hell yeah moment. That's just my 2 cents on it. Ultimately, I'd say The Babysitter is a pretty good time overall. It's nothing too unique. It mostly exists to like flip the roles of teenagers in horror movies, which is the part of the movie I think works the best. And it's not very scary because it focuses more on, I won't say comedy, but more like the fuck yeah feeling of watching a kick-ass movie every now and then. And sometimes that works, sometimes that's funny, sometimes that's exciting, sometimes it kind of rubs it in your face and tries to pretend to be a cult classic before it's had any time to become one naturally. But for a Halloween movie, for just a fun time, if you're just looking for some bloody, exciting entertainment that rests comfortably at 80 to 90 minutes, The Babysitter is a perfectly fine time. I, for one, quite enjoyed it, and I appreciate that it's literally just a story about a crazy babysitter and doesn't try to pretend to have a higher point beyond that, except for maybe a scene or two that tries to prove that, hey, puberty sucks and the things you romanticize might not be that great. Like, it's not trying to rub a moral in your face. It's just a story of a kid fighting back against 5 insane teenagers. And it gets very fun if you're willing to play along with that. So, I'd say definitely give it a watch. It's fun times. Nothing more, nothing less, but it's fun times. Thanks for watching my review of this slightly alternative, fun little slasher movie. Don't forget to leave a like and tell me in the comments what kind of fun horror movie you like the most. Those funhouse horrors you watch not to be scared, but just to enjoy the ride while you're at it. And don't forget to subscribe to see many more reviews of movies, comic books, video games, whatever kind of nerdy shit I happen to be into and wanting to talk about recently. I also have many different social medias you can follow, and there are links to all of them in the description below. See you next time, folks!